They called her Target Girl, never spoke to her, never asked her name. She fixed their equipment, cleaned their mess, until one day, a SEAL handed her his rifle, and the moment she touched it, everything changed. One shot, then another. Silence. Then someone said her name, and the entire range fell quiet. Who was she? Why had she vanished, and what exactly happened in Kalirun Gorge? Before we begin, tell me where are you watching from, and what's the most powerful story you've ever heard? Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. The desert wind cut across range echo like a blade, dry, sharp, and unrelenting. The midday sun blistered the Utah sky, turning the steel targets at the far end of the range into shimmering ghosts. Tension clung to the air thick, electric. Warrant Officer Troy Maddox, sleeves rolled, swagger set, stood behind the firing line with his arms crossed. His voice rang out over the buzz of radios and the soft click of scope adjustments. "I swear," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "at this point, even the damn target mechanic could outshoot some of you." A few of the younger operators laughed, unsure if they were supposed to. One elbowed the guy next to him. A ripple of discomfort moved across the group, but no one challenged it. Clare Wittmann heard it from where she stood, tightening the bolts on a remote sensor system. Her cap pulled low, tools in hand. She didn't look up, didn't speak. She never did. "Yeah, you," Maddox called again, eyes locking on her as she stood, still playing ghost. Silence. Then movement not from her, but from the left end of the firing line. A figure stepped forward. Loner, cold denim, calm, quiet, the kind of man who never needed to raise his voice to command a room. He didn't say a word, just walked across the hard-packed earth, past the scopes, the side eyes, the half-finished insults. In his hands, he carried his personal Macmillan TAC-338 sniper rifle. When he stopped in front of Clare, even the wind seemed to pause. No one spoke, no one moved. Denham held out the rifle. Clare stared at it. Her hand twitched. There was no instruction, no invitation, just the weight of something ancient pressing down on that moment. The shadows of lives lived in silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty, but heavy. Her fingers hovered near the barrel and trembled. Not visibly, not for most. But Denham saw it. He saw the flicker in her throat as she swallowed hard, saw the rhythm of her chest tighten, breath held like a countdown. Clare Wittmann hadn't held a rifle in 3 years. Not since Calaroon Gorge. Not since 3 shots ended 3 lives and saved 18. Her hand closed around the weapon. Everything else disappeared. The laughter died. The desert held its breath. She stepped forward, her boots crunching over gravel and sun-baked sand. Every movement smooth, deliberate. No hesitation now. Her body seemed to remember what her mind had tried to bury. She dropped into prone with silent precision, adjusted the bipod, checked the chamber, sighting in. No rangefinder, no wind meter, no spotter, just breath and distance. 250 meters. She exhaled, then squeezed. The rifle cracked like thunder. Across the range, one of the farthest steel targets jolted. A red flag fluttered up, signaling a confirmed center mass hit. A few operators gasped. Most just froze. She didn't flinch, chambered again. Another breath. Another trigger pull. Second target. Second hit. Dead center. The kind of precision you couldn't fake. The kind of precision that spoke of thousands of hours, not just training, but surviving. When she stood, the silence was deafening. Denham stepped forward, taking the rifle back without a word, his face unreadable. From behind them, Commander Ellis Monroe approached, his clipboard forgotten in one hand, his jaw slightly open. "Clare," he breathed. Clare Wittmann. The name hit the group like a bolt. Operators looked at one another, some confused, some wide-eyed. Maddox didn't move. "You're kidding," someone muttered. "That's not." 3 confirmed neutralizations, Denham said aloud, still facing Clare. Kalirun Gorge, extreme elevation, crosswinds, adverse light, all under fire. He turned to the rest. 18 Marines walked out alive because of her shots. Now everyone turned. Now they stared. The mechanic, the ghost, the woman they never noticed. Troy Maddox stood rigid. His face was a mask, but his eyes betrayed him, flashing recognition, then disbelief, then something like shame. Claire's expression didn't change. Not much, but something in her jaw shifted. A silent reply to everything they hadn't said in 3 years. She handed the rifle back to Denham, then walked past Monroe without acknowledging him, walked past Maddox, past the junior operators who had laughed just minutes before, and headed for the parking lot like none of it mattered. But it did. Everyone knew, and no one, not one of them, would ever forget the way she had looked, calm and quiet, with the sun behind her and the impossible shot echoing across range echo. Inside the command shed, Monroe's hand hovered over his radio. He didn't press the button. Not yet. Outside, the operators whispered, "Did you see her form?" She didn't even flinch. That grouping, I thought the wind was unworkable. I didn't even know she was military. I thought she was just fixing stuff. Maddox hadn't moved. He stared at the distant targets, eyes unfocused. Denham stood next to him now. "Still think she's just the target girl?" he asked quietly. Maddox didn't answer. Clare reached her old truck, opened the door, paused. Her hands, now steady, rested on the frame. She looked up just once back toward the range. Cole Denham was walking her way. Slow, purposeful. She waited. When he stopped beside her, he didn't speak right away. Then, gently, he asked, "Why now?" Her voice, when it came, was low, rough from years of disuse. "Because sometimes," she said, "ghosts don't stay buried." He nodded. "I figured it was you. Just wasn't sure until today." "You weren't supposed to be," she said. "I know." She climbed into the cab. Denham placed one hand on the doorframe. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you picked the rifle up again." Clare looked straight ahead. "I didn't pick it up for them," she said, then drove away. Back on the range, Monroe keyed his radio at last. "Get me General Kellogg," he said. Static answered, then a voice. "Go ahead." "Sir," Monroe said, "we have a situation, one I think you'll want to see personally." He paused, then added, "It's Clare Wittmann. She's active again." 3 years earlier, the gates of Range Echo had opened just after dawn. No fanfare, no escort, just a battered truck and a woman with hollow eyes behind the wheel. Clare Wittmann stepped out, handed over her paperwork, and nodded once at the gate guard. He barely glanced up, just waved her through with a bored grunt. She didn't mind. That was the point. The base admin listed her as a civilian range technician, target maintenance and electronic calibration. She arrived every morning before the first transport and left after sundown, always alone, within days. People stopped greeting her altogether. They just called her the target girl. The first time someone tried to make conversation, an eager young lieutenant offering her coffee, Clare declined with a quiet shake of her head. She didn't look him in the eye. He never approached her again. By the end of her first month, she had become part of the backdrop, like sandbags, wires, or wind flags, useful but unnoticed. She moved with purpose but without presence. Her boots never echoed. Her footsteps never lingered. Inside the storage shed near the South Ridge, she kept her tools arranged with obsessive order: calipers, lubricant, target calibration pads, notebooks filled with angle logs and wind data she never shared. She said little, and she never touched a rifle. But before Range Echo, before Utah's dry silence, there was Kalirun Gorge and Ember Valley. The mission wasn't supposed to happen that day. A miscommunication, a schedule moved forward, a recon delay that never got transmitted. Claire's unit call sign Whisper 3 had been inserted late afternoon, light dropping fast. The target a ridge line held by insurgents with confirmed intel on an imminent ambush route. They moved quietly, climbing the shale slopes with practiced formation. Claire had her spot. She always did. High ground, clean line of sight, breezes steady at 4 knots from the southeast, scope dialed, one eye in the lens, the other, metaphorically closed. She was 29 then, 11 years into service, over 72 confirmed precision kills. She didn't flinch, didn't shake, didn't pause, until that day. Through the optic, 3 shapes appeared. They moved quickly, confident, weaving through sparse brush, shoulders squared, weapons in hand. No hesitation. Claire adjusted the dial, breathing steady. The wind drift was minimal. Elevation set, but as the lead figure stepped into full view, her breath caught. The boy couldn't have been older than 15. Maybe 14. His face still had the softness of youth. No beard, cheekbones too thin, eyes too wide, but the AK he held was real. His grip was trained. He knew how to move. She shifted, scopes checked the others. Same age, same look. 3 child soldiers. Radio crackled. Whisper, 3 targets confirmed. Fire when ready. Claire didn't respond. Her finger hovered over the trigger. The boys moved faster now, closer to the canyon pass where the Marine convoy would be in minutes. One of them raised a hand giving a signal. She had seconds. Whitman, status. Her breath slowed. She pulled the trigger. 1 shot. First boy down. The others froze startled. Second shot. Second drop. The third boy ran, not wildly, tactically, zigzagging, staying low. She adjusted and fired. 3 shots, all clean. 3 children, all armed, all dead. Targets down. She reported. Her voice was level. Her heart was not. The rest of the team moved in. They found the enemy cache. Dozens of grenades, IEDs, a stolen man-pad. Intel confirmed the boys were part of a forced conscription ring. Children trained and deployed like pawns. They would have wiped out an entire Marine patrol. 18 men and women, 5 minutes away. Instead, they lived. Because Claire pulled the trigger. But that night, Claire didn't sleep, nor the next, nor the week after. Every time her eyes shut, the third boy reappeared. Not as a combatant, just a kid. Dirty face, wild eyes, falling backward in slow motion. She stayed silent during debrief. She passed the psych eval barely, but something had changed. Not in her skill, in her soul. She requested reassignment. Her CO resisted, so she submitted full discharge paperwork. Her file listed it as voluntary separation under honorable conditions, with recommendation for civilian transition due to psychological strain, level 2 combat fatigue, borderline dissociation. She didn't fight the label. She signed the form and left. Utah seemed as far from Kalirun Gorge as she could find without leaving the country. Dry air, no civilians, no children, just steel and math. Range Echo became her exile and her penance. In the early months, Claire wouldn't even look at the rifles during diagnostics. If someone asked for assistance recalibrating scopes, she sent them to someone else. When firing drills echoed through the canyon, she moved to the back of the compound and worked on maintenance logs. Once, during a night exercise, a stray shot echoed too close. She dropped a wrench and didn't pick it up for nearly a minute. Her hands shook. No one saw. She made sure of it. Every night, she lay in her bunk, bare walls, single fan, lights off, and stared at the ceiling until morning bled through the blinds. Sleep, when it came, was jagged. The dreams weren't violent. They were worse than that. Replays. The third boy always ran the same line, the same trees, the same moment his face turned sideways before the bullet struck. It always hit, and it never changed anything. But Claire did. She stopped hoping it would fade. Instead, she buried it. Under work, under silence, under perfect, meticulous routines that no one paid attention to. She cleaned every target bracket by hand, rewired faulty trip sensors on her own time, filed micro burrs off metal plates using precision techniques learned in sniper school, but now applied to bolts and steel. She filled notebooks with wind charts no one asked for. She knew the barometric shifts in Echo Canyon by heart, but she never touched a trigger again. Until one afternoon, a new recruit stumbled on a stacked crate that nearly collapsed. Claire caught it before it crushed his foot. He stammered, "Thanks, miss." She just nodded, didn't correct him, didn't offer her name. He never asked again. Inside the maintenance shed, on the back shelf, sat a locked black case. She never opened it, not in 3 years. It had no name, no tags. Only she knew what was inside. Macmillan TAC 338, custom built, her rifle, the one from Calaroon, the one that whispered across 2,250 meters like a ghost. She kept it oiled, but untouched. A relic, or a grave. One morning, just after the sun rose over Range Echo, Claire stood behind the storage shed, tuning a recalibration unit. The gunfire from early drills thumped softly across the canyon floor. She didn't flinch anymore. She had grown used to the sound, like background noise, like weather. But sometimes, rarely, a certain pitch or pattern would catch her off guard. A cadence that mirrored Calaroon, the rhythm of controlled kills. When that happened, she paused, closed her eyes, and clenched her jaw. Commander Monroe signed off her quarterly review with a single line. Technically perfect, socially absent, 0 incidents. She preferred it that way. The less they saw, the less she had to hide. Until the SEAL teams arrived, until Troy Maddox started barking at everyone, inflating his voice with bravado and insecurity, until that moment 2 weeks ago when he cursed the equipment and blamed Target Girl loud enough for her to hear. She said nothing then, but her hands had trembled for an hour after. She had to redo the calibration on Bay 4 twice, and still the math didn't feel right. Now, 3 years after she stepped out of that truck, Claire stood again in the shed, the same as always. Her hair tucked under the same old cap, her name not even remembered by half the base. But something was different now, because yesterday, she had picked up a rifle again. Not the old one in the black case, a different one. But the result was the same. The shot still found center, and now, they all knew. She knelt near the workbench, carefully cleaning a corroded sensor bracket. The soft scrape of steel on steel echoed faintly. She could still feel the rifle's grip in her palms, still hear the click of the chamber locking forward, still taste the moment of stillness before recoil. It didn't haunt her. Not exactly, but it woke something she had starved for years to behind her. A single rifle cracked in the distance. Sharp, precise, too clean to be a rookie. Claire didn't look. She just tightened the last bolt and kept breathing. The morning after the shot echoed through Range Echo. Clare Wittmann arrived early, earlier than usual. She always came before anyone else. But this time, she didn't head straight for the tool shed. She walked the length of the firing line instead, silent, deliberate, her boots tracing the same dirt where everything had changed. They noticed. They all noticed now. No one called her Target Girl. No one called her anything. But the way they watched her said enough. Claire hated it. The attention felt like heat. Too sharp. Too personal. She didn't want questions. She didn't want praise. She especially didn't want understanding. She just wanted to disappear again. But it was too late. By 0900 hours, the range was alive with motion drills, calibrations, checklists. Commander Monroe stood near Bay 3, reviewing morning assignments. Then the black SUV pulled up. Its tires crackled over gravel. Its license plate didn't match base designations. Doors opened. General Nathan Kellogg stepped out in full-dress uniform, even under the desert heat. His presence alone made junior staff straighten, heads turned, radios went silent. He walked with a purpose, right to Clare. "Miss Whitman," he said calmly, nodding once. "You have a moment." She hesitated, then followed. Inside the operations cabin, he closed the door behind them. The hum of the AC barely masked the tension. "I've read your file," he began. Clare crossed her arms. "All of it," he added. She didn't flinch. "Kalirun Gorge, Operation Ember Valley, 18 Marines, 3 targets, 3 rounds." Still, she said nothing. "It was a clean shot," he continued. "Professionally, tactically, morally." He paused. Harder to say. Claire's eyes lifted, just slightly. "I didn't come to rehash it," he said. "I came because Range Echo needs you, not just as a tech, as a consultant, instruction, wind dynamics, shot math, ballistic theory. You have instructors," she replied flatly. "Not like you," Kellogg said. She looked away. That evening, she found Cole Denham sitting alone at the auxiliary range. He was cleaning his rifle slowly, letting the desert light stretch long across the barrels. He didn't look up when she approached. She didn't sit. "I spoke with the general," she said. Cole nodded once. "They want me consulting," she added. "I figured they would." She stared at the horizon. "I'm not afraid of holding a rifle," she said quietly. "I'm afraid of how right it still feels when I do." Cole paused, then set his rifle down. "You're not wrong to be good at what you were trained for. I didn't shoot by accident." "Cole," she said. Her voice cracked at the edges. "I didn't hesitate. I assessed, adjusted, executed. And I was right." He looked up at her. "That's what haunts me. Not the mistake. The precision." There was silence between them for a while. Then she sat beside him. "They were kids," she whispered. "I can still see their faces." Cole didn't respond with comfort. He knew better. He let the words sit where they landed. 2 days later, Claire stood on the main platform again, clipboard in hand this time, watching, advising, uncomfortable. Troy Maddox watched too, arms crossed, jaw tight. He didn't say much, but when the session ended, he walked by her slow enough to mutter, "One shot doesn't make you God." She didn't respond. Kellogg, standing a few feet away, heard him. "Tread carefully," Maddox, the general, said without raising his voice. "You're speaking to someone who's been further downrange than your ego could reach." Maddox smirked, then walked off. Claire still said nothing. Later that week, a young operator named Ellis Garcia struggled with wind compensation on a 1,600-meter shot. His form was solid, but his grouping veered low right every time. Claire watched quietly, then stepped forward. "Breathe on the hold, not the squeeze," she said. Garcia looked over. "Ma'am, the wind shifts mid-channel," she added. "Compensate for the terrain rise just after the 1,200-meter mark." He adjusted. Next shot hit just off center. The one after center mass. "Holy," he started to say, but Claire was already walking away. Word spread fast. Operators began approaching her directly, not out of curiosity, out of need. And she responded, cautiously at first. Few words, sharp observations, specific fixes. They listened. Even Maddox listened. He didn't ask, but he stood close, took notes, implemented the same technique she offered Garcia with his own group 2 days later. That same week, during a hostage rescue simulation, a new recruit lined up a shot with a narrow angle and crosswind. One mistake, and the scenario failed. Claire stood nearby, arms folded. She watched him over-adjust, watched the hesitation creep in. Right before he fired, she spoke. "You're 2 degrees high. Wind shear's lifting the round left. Delay a half second." He adjusted. The shot rang out, perfect hit. Simulation passed. The recruit turned in disbelief. Claire nodded once, then walked off. That night, Claire sat alone in the motor shed, the door open, the air cool, the stars clear above. Kellogg found her there, hands wrapped around a mug, eyes locked on the dark horizon. He didn't speak right away. Then softly, he asked, "Do you know why I came here myself?" She didn't answer. "Because this place is filled with shooters," he said. But only a handful of them have lived what you have. Even fewer carried the consequences." She stayed silent. "You can't erase Calaroon, Claire," he said, "but you can balance it by passing on what you know, not the shots, but the discipline, the responsibility, the restraint." "I don't want to make anyone like me," she said. "You won't," he replied. "You'll make them better than you." 2 days later, Claire stood at the long-range platform again. This time, she wasn't just observing, she was explaining. She pulled out a diagram, wind currents layered over topographic lines, and showed 3 snipers how terrain features created invisible tunnels that bent their calculations. She used terms none of them had heard before, explained it simply, cleanly, and when they applied it, their shots tightened immediately. One leaned back and laughed in disbelief. Claire smiled barely. But it was real. Troy Maddox approached that afternoon. His posture wasn't aggressive. His tone wasn't sharp. He held a printout of his last grouping. "Your math fixed this," he said. Claire glanced down, then up. Maddox hesitated. "Where'd you learn that system?" "I didn't," she said. "I built it. I had to. The standard charts didn't save lives fast enough." He nodded slowly. There was no apology, but there was something close. "I've got a unit running a mobile hostage sim tomorrow," he added. "Variable conditions. Wouldn't mind another set of eyes." Claire didn't answer right away. Then, "Finally, I'll be there." In the training that followed, she found her rhythm, still silent, still distant, but not unreachable. Operators asked, she responded, and as the days turned to weeks, Clare Wittmann, the ghost of Range Echo, became something else. Not a symbol, not a myth, a teacher, one forged in fire. But the ghost didn't disappear. One night, Cole found her alone near Bay 12, sitting on a crate, staring into the dirt. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't answer for a while. Then softly, "I didn't see it coming. What did the part where helping someone didn't make me feel weaker?" He smiled gently. "You're not replacing what happened," he said. "You're building around it." The next morning, Claire handed Commander Monroe a typed report. At the top, proposed ballistics curriculum, Tier 3 long-range training. It outlined 7 modules from advanced wind calculus to rapid adaptive fire techniques, all based on her notes. Her system. Monroe looked up from the last page. "You serious?" She nodded. "You're really staying." "I'm not done yet," she said. And in the back of the storage shed, the black rifle case still sat untouched, but no longer forgotten. Claire passed it every morning. She didn't reach for it, didn't need to, because now her hands were building something else. Clare Wittmann stood before Commander Monroe's desk, a folder in her hand. She didn't fidget, didn't blink more than necessary. But something in the tight line of her shoulders betrayed how much this moment cost her. "I'll do it," she said quietly. "But on my terms." Monroe leaned back in his chair. "Define terms." She laid it out clearly. No combat rotations, no battlefield psychology. She would teach only what she mastered: wind dynamics, shot math, ballistic behavior, terrain interpretation. The rest stayed behind locked doors in her mind. "I'm not a symbol," she said. "I'm a system." Monroe didn't argue. He signed the approval that day. By the following week, Claire had turned one of the unused classrooms into a war room of charts, diagrams, and old handwritten notebooks. She brought them in one by one, young snipers, eager and raw, some still carrying the cockiness of people who hadn't failed yet. She stripped it out of them with numbers, She made them calculate wind vectors across terrain shifts, taught them how light changed readings after 1,400 hours. She showed them how to listen to cross breeze against their cheekbones when tech failed. They listened. Her curriculum wasn't glamorous. It didn't quote doctrine. It didn't talk about bravery or sacrifice. It talked about math, angles, time, elevation, the science of not missing, and slowly. Word spread. Other units requested access. Operators who had once smirked now stood in line to absorb what she knew. They weren't afraid of her, but they respected the way her silence made room for clarity. One afternoon, Troy Maddox stood in her doorway. He didn't speak at first, just looked at the whiteboard filled with slope corrections. "I was wrong," he said finally. Claire didn't respond. He didn't expect her to. "I've got a special scenario training this Friday. High pressure, simulated civilian interference would help to have your insight." She didn't move. Then slowly, she nodded. "I'll observe," she said. Nothing more. Maddox nodded once and left. That was enough. In the Friday exercise, one of the recruits panicked during a hostage scenario. Claire was watching from behind a windshield. She didn't bark orders, didn't intervene. She stepped forward calmly, adjusted his elbow, and whispered, "You're locking your shoulder. Let the recoil travel through your core." The young man steadied, fired, hit clean, and exhaled like he hadn't breathed in minutes. Later, while the others reset the course, he approached her. "You ever miss?" Claire looked at him for a long time. "Yes," she said, "but not when it mattered." A week later, Claire stood in front of a map board. 5 young operators gathered around her, eyes fixed on her hands. She pointed to elevation lines, windbreak contours, and thermal layers. "You don't always get your gear," she said. "So you read the land. The terrain will whisper if you know how to listen." One of them, a sharp-eyed woman from Texas, raised a hand. "Who taught you this method?" Claire paused, then answered plainly, "A mistake. In Kalirun Gorge, and 3 gunshots I can't forget." No one spoke. They didn't have to. After that session, Claire walked alone along the ridge behind Range Echo. The wind tugged at her jacket, warm with dust. In the distance, the target shimmered under the sun. She stopped by Bay 4, the same position where Denham had handed her the rifle weeks ago. She stood in the same spot, closed her eyes. This time, she felt steady. Cole Denham joined her just before dusk. He carried 2 rifles, slung across his shoulder, and a small cooler tucked under one arm. "Thought I'd find you here," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Want to shoot?" She hesitated, then smiled, just slightly. "Only if you brought coffee." He grinned. "Did better. Brought cold brew." They set up side by side. 2 targets at 1,500 meters. No crowd, no pressure. Just the rhythm of bolts sliding, breath sinking, dust settling. Claire went first. She adjusted calmly. Fired. Hit center. Cole whistled. "Still got it," he said. Claire looked through the scope a moment longer, then pulled away. He watched her. "Feels different now, doesn't it?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah, because this time, I'm not trying to disappear." They sat for a while in the dirt, backs to the targets, drinks in hand. The desert turned orange, then gold, then violet. Cole looked over at her. "So what now?" Claire took a slow sip. "I keep teaching," she said. "Keep building something they can carry forward." He nodded. "You're good at it." She chuckled. "I was trained to end things. Teaching, that's learning how to start again." Back inside her shed, Claire unlocked the black rifle case for the first time in years. She didn't pull the weapon out. She just looked at it, ran her fingers along the foam lining, then closed it again and relocked it. Some things weren't meant for daily use. Some were meant to remind you why you chose a different path. 2 months later, Commander Monroe invited her to speak at the Advanced Sniper Orientation. She didn't deliver a speech. She walked in, drew a terrain map, and said, "This isn't a lecture, it's a conversation." And it was. She asked each of them how they thought wind changed across elevation. They gave textbook answers. She showed them where it failed, then showed them how to solve it. At the end, one of the instructors asked, "What's the single most important part of the shot?" Claire looked at the group. Knowing when not to take it, that night, back at the range, Claire sat next to Cole under the stars again. She had a different energy now, not lighter, more whole. He handed her his rifle. One last round. She nodded, lined up, breathed, fired. Center hit. Cole grinned. "Feels the same." Claire stared into the dark where the target sat, then looked through the scope one last time. "No," she said. "It feels right, because this time, I'm teaching them how to save lives." She set the rifle down beside her, not as a burden, but as a tool, something she finally chose to carry. And when the wind shifted across Range Echo, soft and even, Clare Wittmann was no longer a ghost. She was a guide,